that seem like it's working?
Yep, looks great. Perfect.
All right. So yeah, my name's Duncan Lutes, and I'm a fire ecologist. I work for the Forest Service over in Missoula at the Fire Lab. And my background is in fuels, and specifically sampling fuels for fire effects and simulating fire effects, that kind of thing. One of the applications that I manage, though, or help manage, is the FFI application, which is specifically for monitoring. And so I was asked just to give a pretty quick overview of FFI. I'm not sure how familiar people are or aren't with it, but I'll go through some things, and feel free to ask questions at any time as I'm going through here. So FFI, it's this application again for monitoring, storing and reporting on monitoring data. It was initially funded by the Fields Management Committee back in 2006. So it's hard to believe it's been almost 20 years since we started on this. And it was developed by an interagency team that was led by the Park Service. And that's because the Park Service has been the group that's been required to use it. So they have been leading development, and they continue to lead development. But initially we had people from the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, BIA, Park Service, and BLM all on board when we did the initial development of FFI. So it wasn't really developed in a box or sort of, without any insight into what people wanted. And so we were able to get on an application that has been really pretty useful for a long time. It's not a system for tracking acres or just looking for qualitative assessments. This is a database for storing plot level data and then getting that data out, whether you're going to do analysis or just create reports or do some queries. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. It's only a software application. So if you're looking for a field manual, really the Fire Monitoring Handbook, which is Park Service publication, or FIREMON, which it sounds like you're familiar with, or there were some protocols in a publication called Measuring and Monitoring Plant Populations. Those are all resources that you can use to collect data. And then FFI is really flexible. So you can put all of that data into the database, regardless of what protocol you're using. So it was created by merging these two well-known systems. It was FIREMON and FEAT, and this really all came about in about 2003. Each group was at a conference and listened to each other's presentation and realized there was so much in common with FEAT and FIREMON that we should merge them into one application. And so we got together and did that with the benefit of having just one application to manage and get money for rather than two, and also to increase the potential for interagency data sharing. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second here. So FEAT and FIREMON integrated, that's what FFI comes from. And we know it's not the most imaginative, acronym in the world, but that's what we had at the time. And now most people are actually using FFI Lite, and FFI Lite are, in terms of the user interface, are the same. Everything works the same both ways. The database is different, but you can move data between the two different databases really easily. So if you hear FFI or FFI Lite, it's the same thing. And we have people in the Park Service, again, using it, and it's required for all their fire effects monitoring in the Park Service. They all have to use FFI. Forest Service, BIA, tribes, BLM, Fish and Wildlife Service, lots of folks that are using FFI. And really one of the biggest benefits, again, is this opportunity to share data. And so, for instance, the Bridger Teton National Forest and, Bridger Teton National Park and the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest, they share monitoring data. The Kaibab, Grand Canyon share monitoring data. There was a project in Oregon where it was two counties in Oregon. I believe it's Josephine and Jackson County in Oregon. The BLM and the Forest Service all did some fields treatment, and they all used the same database for all of their monitoring data. It was really nice because everybody could get all the data. So that just to underscore the usefulness of being able to share your data. And then there are folks that like to share data with the public, and there have been at least one pretty well-known instance in the Southeast where there were folks that weren't all that interested in the Forest Service doing what they were doing in the Southeast United States and burning in one particular forest. And they shared the data with them and got these people involved. And now those people that were really against all the burning and treatments that they were doing are real advocates and are actually helping collect data. And so just one more instance where having the availability of the data can really help build relationships with stakeholders and that kind of thing. So FFI, the whole basis of FFI is that we assume that plots are established permanently and then revisited over time. So you can really go out and you can put as many plots as you want to on the ground. You can organize them into different projects, however you want them. But when you look at the database, and I'll show you that when we at the end of the PowerPoint, but you'll see that you can look at a plot and you can see every date that it was visited and all the data that was associated with that sample visit. So we include the database for storing the data. There are over 50 different data collection protocols. You can collect data in either English or metric units. A lot of people see that 50 data collection protocols and they start to panic and say, I don't want to collect that much. You can use just one protocol if you want to. If you just want to collect Brown's data, you can do that. So you're not required to collect a whole lot of data in FFI. We just have lots of options. The data entry forms are really designed so that you can modify them, hopefully to make them look a lot more like your data forms, because then that makes, you know, if you use a hard copy data form, it makes it easier to move your data into the database. And it also has some basic error checking, which I'll demonstrate later. And then that's all the data, getting the data in, and then getting data out. You can create reports of the raw data, for instance, just the brown stick counts, if that's what you want for whatever reason, or the summarized data. So you could look at tons per acre that you've sampled with the Brown's transects. You can unstratify or stratify your data, and then you can export that data into PDF files or in CSV format. So let's say that you have some sort of analysis you want to do outside of FFI. FFI has some kind of canned reports and so forth in it, but if you wanted to do analysis outside of FFI, you can export all your data to a CSV file, import it into one or whatever application that you're using, and use it that way. We have a query tool so you can sort your data and summarize data up maybe in a way that we don't do it in our just canned reports in FFI, and then export that data if you want to. Also, the query tool is really useful for looking for data quality issues, like for instance, tree heights that are too high, or diameters that are too big or too small, that kind of thing. Then we have a utility for species management, and it turns out the species management is really the biggest pain of the whole database for us as developers. Species management there are just a lot of different instances for how people want to collect data and record species information. And so that becomes kind of challenging. We've tried to make it pretty easy for you as the user to set up a species management, or I should say a local species list that works for you, that's not too complicated. And then you can export your data from FFI into the forest vegetation simulator if you're using that, or the first order fire effects model, or fuel calc. And the idea is that since you've already gone to the work of entering your data once, why have to re-enter your data into FBS or FOFM or fuel calc? So we just have a utility so that you can export all your data right out for those other programs. In terms of most commonly used protocols, the Brown's transects, the photo loads, like what you guys did on your phone, the photo series, we have protocols for all of those. Surface fuels vegetation is really for estimating the cover and height of live and dead urban shrub. And we added this because, you know, a lot of people were collecting Brown's data, but that's really not the fuel that carries fire often. And so people said, we need another protocol. So we added this surface fuels vegetation. A lot of people use that. Trees, the fixed radius plots, and you can do individuals or overstory trees, saplings and seedlings. And if you only want to collect one of those, you can just collect one. You don't have to do all three. We have the variable radius plots if you want to sample trees using a prism. Cover, you can sample using a point methodology, and actually there are 3 different point methodologies. You can do cover quadrats. You can do cover line intercept. You can also just do an ocular estimate of cover on an entire, let's say, 10th acre macro plot. That's a different protocol. We have protocols for the density in belts and quadrats, and then the frequency, just general frequency, occurrence data, or nested rooted frequency. So those aren't all the protocols, but those are the ones that get used most often. So that's kind of what FFI is real quickly. In terms of the future, we have continued funding that's coming from the Forest Service, Fire and Aviation Management, and from DOI and the Park Service. And one of the things that makes people nervous with a database is that you can put a bunch of data in it. We have databases that have over 25 years of data in it now, because it was data converted from the predecessors of FFI. And so I always like to just point out that we do have continued funding, and especially it's mostly here on the Park Service side because they're required to use FFI at this point. And I'll get into a little bit more about what we're doing in the future here, and that'll just show you that there is a bigger commitment in the Park Service. But first, for desktop, we continue to make user suggested improvements. And I always like to impress on people that we take their suggestions really to heart, and we've made a lot of changes in FFI over the years. We've had people who used FFI, let's say 10 years ago, and use it now, and they say, wow, this is completely different and way more usable. And so if you're an FFI user and you say, hey, would you add this? Or if you think that you would like something added, if you just send me an email, I'm happy to talk about adding different functionality in the application. So in the desktop, we're going to continue to make those user suggested improvements, but we're working on some other things. And so we're kind of easing back a little bit on the desktop work and working more on these other things. And first is the USGS at the Aeros Data Center in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, has a remote app, which is really just a virtual machine, and FFI is installed there. And right now it's only available to the Park Service. But what's nice is that the Park Service people now, they don't have to install FFI on their desktop. They can just go in and enter data right on the web through the remote application itself. And it's also available to multiple people at one time. And so in the Park Service, they have a lot of people that might be working in one database at once. You don't have to worry about synchronizing data. Sharing data is a lot easier, that kind of thing. So that's only available right now to the Park Service. It will next be available to other people in the DOI, and then the Forest Service, and then whoever after that. So we kind of have a timeline where we're working on that. And then really the end goal, that the remote app is just an interim step for really the Park Service right now, but we are working on Web FFI, which would be a full web-based application available to everybody that's online. And we already have actually the data warehouse. So all of the Park Service data now has been rolled up into one large national database. And so it is available for people like the Landfire program, if you're familiar with that. They update their fuels layers every year. And so Landfire can just go and pull all the data, all the fuels data, for instance, right out of the FFI data warehouse for all the Park Service right now. So Web FFI is in development. And then there's the question on whether we're going to end desktop support after Web FFI is put out or released for the general user. And I don't know yet what's going to happen. When we started with FIREMON, we had people who said, we definitely don't want a national database. We have proprietary data that we want on our machine. And so some of that might be not such a worry anymore as it was. Particularly in the BIA was especially interested in having their data separate. Databases that had information about threatened and endangered species. So those are just questions we have to answer. And also early on, 20 years ago, internet access wasn't all that available everywhere. And so that was one of the reasons why we went to a desktop application. So do we still need the desktop application? I don't know, we're talking about that. And then we have people who are asking us about Survey 123. We are not within the FFI program, actively doing anything with Survey 123 for electronic data collection. We have a couple groups who have created their own forms just for a few protocols. Trees and Brown's transects, I believe, are the ones that are already out there. And you can then export your data out of Survey 123 in a CSV format and import the data right into FFI. And there are some things you kind of have to understand about what you're doing there. But mostly, I just wanted to say for electronic data collection in terms of Survey 123, we don't have any kind of a formal development program for that. We do have capability to do data import and export through rugged field computers that are using a Windows operating system. And also you can import data in CSV format. And as long as there aren't species, that's pretty straightforward. So for like photo loads, be really easy to import that data. If there are species, there are kind of some things that are a little bit more complex, certainly doable. We have the National Park Service, the Grand Canyon and the Park Service now is doing all their data collection in CSV format. So it's not insurmountable. It's just, you just have to know what you're doing there. So in terms of the application that you had on your phone, I talked to the developers just a week ago and said, you know, it would be nice is if you could export that data in CSV format so that people could import it into FFI. And they've heard that, and they're not exactly sure how it's gonna occur or when it's gonna occur, but they know that, so that hopefully if you're collecting photo loads on your phone, you can easily import the data right into FFI. I don't know how far down the road that is, but it's certainly a discussion point that's happened. So that was that's kind of the future development, where we're headed, and things we're thinking about. In terms of training, we have 2 online classes every year, usually in the spring, and then before Christmas. Between Thanksgiving and Christmas is typically when we've done it in the past. And if you have interested or have an interest in learning more about FFI, send me an email, and the next slide will have my email address on it. And I'll put you on the email list so that you get all the announcements for when the trainings are and when we post new versions of FFI, which is typically about once a year. Then there's a whole set of self-paced exercises and materials on the Frames website. And again, I'll show that link in just a second. It's the same material that's used in online class. So if you just want to go through this yourself, you can do that. And I'm surprised at how many people will contact me and say, I have a question. I went through the self-paced things and I'm trying to do this and just wondering how it's going to work. We have a lot of people who take the self-paced class and I never know about it until they give me a call. On the Wildlife Fire Learning Portal, Heather encouraged us a couple of years ago to create videos of all our PowerPoints. So of all the PowerPoints that are included in the materials for the training, there are videos if you just want to watch those videos on the portal. And then I do every year a number of just customized classes. Typically they're about a one-day class, and I'll get together and work with folks who have a specialized set of protocols, let's say, and they know exactly what they want to do in the field, and they don't want to really learn all about all the different options in FFI. They just know what they want to do, and I will customize a training program for them. It takes a while to set those up, so if you're thinking about doing it, don't say, hey, can we do this next week? It probably takes a couple of months, because I like to set up a database that really has only the protocols that you need in it and talk to you about species and all that kind of stuff, so that we really get a database that's appropriate. And I've done this a lot. We did, so for instance, there was a fire effects monitoring class, just like what you did. We did one in the fall in Arizona. We did one also earlier in South Carolina. And so for each of those, I did these customized classes that were just one-day classes, pretty much tied to those systems that were there. So happy to help people do that. And then this is the Frames website link and my email. So if you have any questions about FFI, really the website is where to go for new versions, and again, for all of those training materials. And if you have questions about FFI or just monitoring in general, people call me and say, hey, can you help me set up a monitoring plan? I'm happy to help do that. I do that quite a bit. So just send me an email. So that's the end of the PowerPoint. I do want to do a bit of a live demo of FFI, but I want to just stop here and see if there are any questions that I can answer about FFI before I move on.
No, I just wanted to touch, this is Bob, Warm Springs. As far as support service for a product coming out, I think that's where people go, okay, it's out there, but where can I find that help? Duncan and Mary Beth and the rest of the team and the research and development there have been a big help for us. And I want to let you guys know and thank you guys for what you've done. And we've had kind of a little bit of a unique situation here. We run Apple, and then we use the Parallels, which is the Windows version on Apple. And sometimes that SQL Server did not talk. And so Duncan and I spent a lot of time together working on that. And I learned a lot. And, there was some folks that called me and said, hey, did you get this to work? And so we were able to tag team and help a couple of folks out there. So thanks again, Duncan, for the technical support and following up for so many years with this program.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, I really do. MB and I really do try and keep up with people who ask questions. We're trying to be pretty responsive. So thanks, Bob, for that. And you're the only one who's using Parallels. So it's been a learning experience for me too. So I think this might be a little bit small on your screen, some of the text. It's not too important that you can see everything. Mostly I just wanted to show the layout so you can see what the database looks like. When you open FFI, you come right into this project management part of the application, and there's data entry and edit, query tool, reports and analysis down here in the lower left. But in terms of project management, this is just what you would imagine. It's where you set up your project units, and you can assign as many plots as you want to these project units. You can have as many project units as you want, and you can move plots around. Plots can be assigned to more than one project unit. So it's pretty flexible. Really, once you start in this, you don't ever have to feel like there's no going back, because you can modify this pretty much any way you want. And so then so we have this blue folder, that's the project unit. And then this is the macro plot, Dillon Creek RX01. And then we have these sample visits. So this particular macro plot was sampled 3 times. And that's the same for all 6 of the macro plots in this project unit. And then it'll show you all the different protocols that are assigned to each of these sample visits. Most people only have 1, so these are not required. You pick, you can just add whatever protocols here. I'll just show you. So you can go in and select any of the protocols that you want to add. And you can just pick 1, or you can pick 10, whatever you want to do. Most people have somewhere between 3 and 5 protocols. I think that's what I wanted to show you there. Then data entry and edit, which is where you probably spend a bit of time if you collect data on hard copy field forms. So this is, we go right in here, for instance, to the trees. There's a tab on the top that says trees or surface fields vegetation. Going back to the trees, there are sub tabs for the individuals, the saplings and the seedlings. You don't have to collect saplings and seedlings if you don't want to, or you can just collect one of these tabs. You don't have to collect all 3. And you can move these fields around. Like I was saying, we try to make this customizable so that you can enter data that in a way that looks kind of like your field form. So let's say that height comes before DBH on your field form. You can just move these columns around. You can also, you can freeze columns. Let's say that you just want to freeze this tag number. Then if I scroll over, I can always see the tag number. Trees is a classic one because there are 42 different fields for tree data that are options. There are only a few that are required, and I'll show you how you know which ones are required. They're the ones that are grayed out. If you click on this view button, they're the ones that are grayed out. All these other ones, you can uncheck these and they won't show up in the data grid. So that just makes life easier. And in terms of data entry, we make it easy because you shouldn't ever have to touch your mouse while you're entering data. You can just tab between all of the fields, and then you click enter, and it starts at the beginning of the next row. So pretty easy to enter data. Let's go to surface fuels. Just to show so there's some error checking here. So if I try and say at 370 degree azimuth, it'll say, nope, you can't do that. It's got to be between 0 and 360. And also, if you try to enter a name in here, if you hover your cursor over the top of any of these fields, it'll tell you what kind of data it is. And in this case, the unit is decimal degrees. So if I try and type north in here, I can't move on. I can't save. I can't do anything until I change that back to 360. And just like everything else, you can hide and move all these fields around, do all that. And all of these data screen changes are saved with the database. So next time you open it up, next time if you share your data with somebody, next time they open it up, that's how it'll be formatted. And here's coarse woody debris. If I say 2.8 inches for the coarse woody debris, again, it's going to say that I can't save that because the minimum diameter for coarse woody debris is 3 inches. I'll put this back to 3 or 7.1. So that just kind of gives you an idea of some of the data entry functionality that we have in here. Here's the query tool. I won't demonstrate a lot of this other than to show you how you could use it, for instance, to see if you had some weird tree diameters or tree heights in your data. So I'm just filtering just on the individuals component, scroll over to DBH, and I can sort here. So with the largest diameter tree was 26.8 inches, and the smallest down here is somewhere just above 5 inches. So, you know, if all of a sudden you have a 268-inch tree, you know that there's a problem. And you can do the same thing with the heights. You can just filter through all this data to do some data checking. That's what most people use the query tool for, but it's much more powerful than that. There are different tabs up here to classify your data and do some grouping, make some calculations and that kind of thing. But we won't get into that. Reports and analysis. So again, you know, one of the real tenets of FFI is it's not just a place to put your data, it's a place where you can access your data. And so we really try to make it easy to get your data out in a number of ways. And one is the query tool. You could create a query and export all of that data out as a CSV file. In reports and analysis, this is the same project we were looking at data entry, this Dillon Creek RX. We have the same 6 plots. Let's say we just want to look at our trees data. It'll create this report, which you can also create in CSV format if you want to. But you can see for each plot, this is plot 1, there are 3 rows. This is the pre-measurement, the remeasurement for the first year, remeasurement for the second year. And you can see how the tree density on each one of those visits has changed. Really looking at the individual plots, it's important. I think it's really important to do that just to look at your data, but usually it's better to stratify your data so you can put all of your plots into one stratification and then look at the data. And so in this case, we have all 6 plots now are included in this particular row. So we went, in this case, it was the treatment was a prescribed fire. And so we had 48.5 trees before the fire. We had 38.5 trees the first year after, 33.5 trees per acre the second year after. So you can see the mortality from the fire and sort of the second order of fire effects also in the delayed mortality. And we have rows in there for the basal area, live crown base height, tree height, QMD, all of that kind of stuff. Just to look at one for surface fields, because, you know, when you're just counting sticks, it's nice to be able to go in and create a report so that you can see the, sorry, having technical issues here, see what those sticks relate to in terms of biomass. So we have the 1, 10, 100 hour, 1,000 hour sound and rotten, duff and litter depth, and then duff and litter loading in this report. And we have the option in FFI to use different fuel constants. So for instance, duff and litter, you know, I think in that app that you use that uses 5 tons per acre per inch for the litter and 10 tons per acre per inch for the duff. If you're working in different systems, for instance, in the Southeast or even in the, you know, high elevation Rockies, you might have different constants that are used to convert your depth into a loading. And so you can change those. And it's the same for the woody material. You can put in different specific gravity for your wood and that kind of thing. In this case, the report shows all of the fuel constants that were used in the report because they were all the defaults. We do have some minor analysis. I shouldn't say minor, just not very extensive analysis. Let's say that we were looking at trees and crown basite, and we want to know, was there a significant change in crown basite after the fire? I can create a report, and this report looks a little different than the other one, but really what you're comparing here statistically are this row of means. And so we're looking at 24.9 feet was the crown basite before the fire, and it went to 35.3 and then 35 or 37.1 the second remeasurement. And so the ultimate question is, was there a significant difference statistically? And that's what this bottom row is that yes, in this case, there was a statistically significant increase in live crown basite at the 95% confidence level. You can create a custom tree report that you can enter in your own DBH classes. So let's say you have overstory trees, you have pole trees and big trees and really big trees and really, really big trees. You could create your own classes here with the minimum and maximum diameter. You could also use a height. You can give this its own name. You can include different statuses. So whether they're live trees or dead trees, and different crown classes, not clown classes, crown classes. And then create a report that has all of that information in it. And so you can have your own real custom report here and it might only include certain species. You can select your species down below here. Sorry, let me pull this down so that you can see the bottom of the screen. So you can select all these different species. You can select species groups. This isn't such a big deal around here, but in the East, where they have oak trees and there are, who knows, 50 different kind of oaks, they can just say, just show me all the oaks, and they can include that in a report really easily. FVS, if you're familiar with that, then you can export your data, let's say, for instance, right into the Inland Empire variant and select one of these forests, habitat type, and export the data. And then you can open it up in FVS and simulate it. And then we have Fuel Calc and FOFM. So export for those two applications. And again, the whole idea is that you've entered your data in FFI. You shouldn't have to enter it into these other applications too. So you could just create those files and make a simulation. I won't really go into species management, but it's there. And then we have a toolbox that just has a few things in it for doing more species management, replacing species in an entire database, that kind of thing. But that's the pretty quick overview, live demo of FFI. And kind of think I'm pretty low on time here, but are there anybody who has questions or anything else I should go over here? Not hearing any, then I'll turn it back over to Autumn.
Yeah.
Do this with paper and pen? Yeah, just doing all the math.
We're just discussing, Duncan, somebody asked in the crowd here, isn't there just an easy button? And so, yeah, sure. It's a lot harder to do. I think like any program, good information in gives you good information out. So this is where we have to get together as a monitoring group, a fuels team, as fuels manager. And, we write the protocols, we set our goals, and we choose a program, and then we learn a system here, and adding in what we did, and that's what I did when we first started here. And we're going to take it to the next level, and we're probably going to go into it a little deeper on some of the stuff that's there. So yeah, it's going to take some time for folks, but I suggest start small and then build on it as you go, because it could, somebody who just learning this kind of stuff and learning software could probably get very overwhelmed quick. Don't let it get overwhelming, because I was there. and I'm still learning. I am no expert by any means, but it is a nice tool to get into and start to drive. Keep it in first gear, then you could go to second, third gear as time goes on.
And that's a good point, Bob. A lot of people look at this and say, oh, geez, do I have to jump in with both feet right away? And you don't. You can start out pretty simple, just like what you said. And another example of this is that I gave a training one time to some folks that wanted to collect a bunch of data, and they went out and they did their first plot up on the hillside, and they called me, and the wind is blowing and I can hear papers blowing around, and they said, oh, this is going to take forever to do these plots. And it does the first couple of times you put these plots in. I think maybe you guys already have experienced this, but if you start out, first of all, it only takes a long time for the first couple of plots, and then you get into a groove, especially if you have 3 or 4 people doing data collection. It really doesn't take that long. But also, I suggest people don't put their first plot in the woods. Put a plot in the yard at the office or something, just to make sure you have all the equipment that you need, get familiar with the steps that people are going to be doing and that kind of thing. And it's the same idea with FFI. Don't go out and collect 100 plots of data and then come in and feel like, oh, I have to enter all this data in FFI today. Just do a few plots. Just start out slow and try to get used to it. And when questions come up, just give me a call.